Welcome back, everyone. Before we start, think about where you were on February 24th, 2022, the day Russia invaded Ukraine. Most Americans caught it on the news, shook their heads, and thought, that's terrible, but it's over there. And then they went back to their lives. That thought, it's over there, is the most dangerous one you can have right now. What I'm going to walk you through today, step by step, is that every conflict happening on this planet is connected, like dominoes. And some of those dominoes are already falling, not as a scare tactic, as a map. Because once you understand the map, you're not scared anymore. You're informed. If you're learning something here, please hit subscribe. You'll get notified every time I post, and you'll be part of something that genuinely matters to me. I have some tough news to share with you today. YouTube has demonetized my channel. Despite the situation I am currently in, I will continue to post videos on YouTube. If you've enjoyed my content and want to help me, I've left a link in the description and in the comments where you can show your support. Every little bit truly means the world to me. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get into the video. Start with what the world actually looks like right now. This is not a normal moment in history. Active military conflicts are running simultaneously in Ukraine, Sudan, Myanmar, the Sahel region of Africa, and the Middle East. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, the group that invented the doomsday clock during the Cold War, moved that clock to 89 seconds to midnight in January of 2026. Here's what that number means. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the closest America ever came to nuclear war, the clock sat at 7 minutes to midnight. Right now, we're closer to catastrophe than at any point during the most dangerous standoff of the entire Cold War. That's not a metaphor, it's a measurement. World military spending reached $2.718 trillion in 2024, a 9.4% jump in a single year, the steepest increase since the Cold War ended. The world's 15 largest military spenders all raised their budgets at the same time, every single one of them, which is the kind of thing countries do when they're genuinely frightened. Something is happening. Here's what that something is. The first domino is the Strait of Hormuz. Most Americans have never heard of this place, but this narrow stretch of water, 33 kilometers wide, practically swimmable, is the most consequential piece of geography on Earth right now. 20% of all the world's oil passes through it every day, 20 million barrels, feeding economies that have no alternative. India draws 60% of its energy from that corridor. China, 40%. Japan, 75%. Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi said it publicly. If the strait closes, Japan runs out of oil in 8 to 9 months, and the entire Japanese economy collapses with it. The Iranians have closed it. Shipping traffic through Hormuz has dropped by roughly 75%, and war risk insurance for vessels attempting passage has climbed about 50% in a matter of weeks. Brent crude has already jumped 39% from pre-conflict levels, crossing $110 a barrel. Natural gas in Europe is up 59%. Fertilizer, the input that grows your food, up 34 to 35%. You feel that yet? That's not a foreign policy problem. That's a grocery bill problem, a heating bill problem, your problem. Now, connect that to food, because most people never make that connection, and they should. The Gulf countries, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, import 80% of their food. Kuwait gets 90% of its drinking water from desalination plants. Saudi Arabia, 70%. Across the Gulf region, 400 desalination plants produce nearly 40% of all desalinated water on Earth, and 100 million people depend on them directly. Iran knows this, and their entire strategy in this conflict is not to defeat America head-to-head. They can't. The play is to hit infrastructure, oil fields, desalination plants, energy hubs. One drone strike knocks out a desalination plant. Iran produces roughly 500 drones a day, with an estimated stockpile of 80,000, each one costing at most $50,000. The American defensive missiles used to shoot them down cost $1 million each. That's a $950,000 disadvantage per drone every single time, and the math only gets worse at scale. On March 19, 2026, the World Food Program issued an emergency warning. The Middle East conflict was triggering a rapidly unfolding humanitarian crisis, with fuel and transport costs feeding through the entire food system and raising prices in markets far removed from the fighting. This war is already in your supermarket. It just hasn't been announced yet. Step 2 is the nuclear question, and here's where people stop listening because the assumption is that nobody would actually do it. The U.S. intelligence community's 2026 annual threat assessment stated, in plain language, that the most dangerous threat posed by Russia is an escalatory spiral leading to direct hostilities, including nuclear exchanges. Russia operates under a military doctrine called escalate to de-escalate. The idea being that if Russia starts losing badly in a conventional fight, they detonate a tactical nuclear weapon, not to win, but to stop the war entirely, to force everyone to back down. Not crazy, cold and calculated. June 2025, Ukraine launched drone strikes against Russian strategic bombers at the Alenia Air Base near the Kola Peninsula, which sits close to Russia's nuclear assets, a non-nuclear country deliberately targeting nuclear delivery systems, which analysts described as one of the most destabilizing military actions in years. France and the United Kingdom responded in July 2025 with the Northwood Declaration publicly stating their nuclear forces can be coordinated against any extreme European threat. August 2025, President Trump ordered 2 nuclear submarines deployed to the region in response to Russian provocations. Nuclear submarines deployed, and North Korea, which has been testing hypersonic ICBMs, and announced a nuclear-powered submarine of its own, sent over 15,000 troops plus thousands of engineers to fight alongside Russia in Ukraine in exchange for fuel, food, and military technology. This stopped being a Ukraine problem a long time ago. Step 3 is Taiwan, the wild card nobody wants to discuss. While the Middle East burned and Ukraine ground on, China watched and prepared. The Pentagon's 2025 China Military Power Report concluded that China expects to be able to fight and win a war on Taiwan by the end of 2027. Not an estimate, but a stated Chinese military planning benchmark. In 2025, Chinese aircraft conducted a record 3,570 incursions into Taiwan's surrounding airspace. December 2025, Beijing staged its largest military exercises around Taiwan in years. And that same month, the United States approved more than $11 billion in arms sales to Taiwan, the largest package ever. Taiwan's president proposed a special defense budget of around $40 billion over 8 years. Japan, constitutionally pacifist since World War II, now openly debates whether an attack on Taiwan triggers its own right to self-defense. And Japanese missiles are already being deployed to Yonaguni Island, approximately 70 miles from Taiwan's coast. 70 miles. Should Taiwan fall, the entire Pacific balance of power shifts overnight. South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, every American ally in the region recalculates its survival odds. And the global semiconductor supply chain, much of which runs through Taiwan, goes dark. People ask me why this is all happening at once, and here's the honest answer. For 70 years, the world ran on a system built after World War II, American-led, with the dollar at its center and American military bases as its enforcement mechanism. It wasn't perfect, but it held. What's happening now is that system is being challenged from multiple directions at the same time. Russia is pushing on it in Eastern Europe. Iran is pushing on it in the Middle East. China is pushing on it in the Pacific. And the United States itself is divided about whether to defend that system or walk away from it. Countries are responding accordingly. 18 NATO members now spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense, the highest number since that guideline was adopted. Poland is spending 4.48% of its GDP on its military. Sweden, neutral for 200 years, raised its defense spending by 34% in a single year in 2024. Countries do not do these things when they feel safe. So what happens next? Step by step. Step 1 has already happened. Energy prices spiked. Oil crossed $110 a barrel. Gas climbed nearly 60% in Europe. Fertilizer up 35%. And every country that imports food felt it the moment it hit. Step 2 is already unfolding. Food insecurity is escalating. Over 670 million people were already suffering hunger before this latest round of fighting, and the WFP is calling it a dual choke point crisis. Supply chains already stressed by Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, now facing simultaneous disruption at Hormuz. Step 3 is regional expansion. The more the conflict widens, the more proxies get activated. The more choke points close, the greater the pressure on Japan, South Korea, and India to get involved just to protect their energy supplies. That's not a political choice. That's arithmetic. Step 4 is economic contagion. Gulf states have long been large investors in American financial markets. And if those countries are destabilized, if their sovereign wealth funds are forced to liquidate assets to fund their own defense, the American stock market doesn't just dip. Step 5 is the nuclear shadow. The conditions for miscalculation have never been more dangerous, with multiple nuclear armed states in active or near active conflict and degraded communication between adversaries. The Doomsday Clock panel specifically noted in 2026 an almost complete absence of communication on strategic stability among nuclear adversaries. That's the most lethal ingredient of all not intention. Accident. Here's what I want to leave you with. Wars almost never start because everyone sat down and decided they wanted one. They start because nobody watched the dominoes fall until it was too late. The diplomats, the generals, the presidents managing this, most of them don't want escalation. But the machinery of escalation runs on its own logic. Once nuclear submarines have been deployed, once negotiators have been killed, once water infrastructure has been destroyed, the off-ramps get narrower and narrower. At 89 seconds to midnight, there's not much room left for a mistake. Not fear, clarity. That's what I want you to take from this. Because the most dangerous thing a citizen can do right now is look away. And the second most dangerous is to assume the people in charge have a plan. Watch the Strait of Hormuz. Watch Taiwan. Watch what happens when the grocery bill doubles and the retirement account halves. Watch which leaders are willing to speak plainly and which ones aren't. This story is still being written. What happens next depends on whether enough people are paying attention. See you in the next one.